Greetings, Pilgrims, and welcome to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage, and today we are continuing with our Battle Royale focus series here, and what we are focusing on today is inventory. I know it's a huge subject, so bear with me. Today's going to be a little bit of talking, but we do have some cool, fancy visual things to show you. Now, last time we had a video about this, you'll notice we had our items here, and we made these really cool pickup items, and they have key here you can press to pick up the item. It has some description of the item, and then it plays this fancy animation. So I hit the key here, you'll see a little animation of the item going into our body, and we are collecting the item, right? Well, that's all well and good visually, but what we need is we need to actually do something kind of physically as far as code and things being connected. So we're going to talk about that, and yes, I know, I'm sorry, it's a bit of a talky episode, but we do have some visual stuff here, including, look at this, a drag and drop UI here. Pretty nice, right? So we're going to go over all this here and kind of a layout of our system, okay? So this in the bottom we're going to get to second. First, let's talk about our actual layout of the inventory. So I'm going to bring up this diagram. So here you should be seeing a diagram on the screen. So this is our little scene here that you just saw. And now we're going to talk about what are the different parts to the inventory that we're going to be building together. All right, so for our first part, you see now is the pickup item, and this is the actual item. In this case, it's the little bullets on the ground here. What this is a physical representation of the item in the world, and it's also going to need to get a couple of handles, and by that we mean it's going to reach out to other bits of code and say, I need to either give you information or I need to get information from you. So you see the two little lines coming off of it here. They're going to hook up to other things in our image here in a second, but these are going to look at to the overall inventory manager, and they're going to look out to our inventory kind of database. Let's look at our second item, the actual inventory item. So this is the kind of blueprint for the whole thing, and what this is in code, this is what we call a dictionary. This will have all the item statistics, what kind of item it is, how rare is it, how many in your inventory do you have, if it has durability, what's its durability, what's the ammo count, all of that, everything you could possibly ever need to know about an item. This is just going to be one huge list of all of the statistics. Kind of like if you're part of the generation where we used to collect baseball cards, these are all the stats. This is all the information you could possibly need about this item, okay? And you'll notice it also has a line that is kicking out to something. So if we go over to the inventory manager, this is the big mother load thing that's going to do most of the work for us, okay? So you see a couple of lines there. It says item add and item remove. So these are going to be functions that we can call and say, hey, when I hit that T key and I pick up those bullets, it's actually going to call out to this and say, hey, I need you to run your item add code. And by the way, I also have on the left here, you see the little line from the pickup item going over to the inventory item. It's going to get all the information about what, in this case, our ammo light bullets are all about. How many are there? What kind of gun is used by that sort of thing. And it's going to take that information and it's going to give it to the inventory manager. Essentially, the manager is going to be like a butler. We just give it a bunch of stuff and say, now go handle everything else for me, please. All right? Finally, we have the inventory UI. In this case, I called it the inventory UI manager, but this is essentially everything about what happens on the screen related to our inventory. And you'll notice that it has what we call a double pipe. So right above the ANA there in manager, there's a connection to the inventory manager, and there's another connection from the inventory manager, because we need both. Because we need to update based upon what's now in our inventory, but also we can make changes specifically in a slot-based inventory system similar to Fortnite. If I click and drag an item and drop it, I need to then reach into the inventory manager and say, yo, call your item remove because I just dropped some stuff, right? Okay, so then you see the line from inventory UI manager kicking all the way out to the left. This is essentially what we're going to build today together. So over here is our BRS UI, and we're starting to build into our inventory UI, and we have some inventory tiles and some slot numbers, all this kind of fanciness we're going to build together today. All right, so I'm going to come back into Unity. Here we are. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk about how we build all of this stuff. And essentially, we're going to be working off of some of the work we've already done in previous episodes, so please make sure you look them up if you need them, okay? So first of all, we have our BRS UI, and this is an empty game object in the world, and you'll notice that its transform is zeroed out. So if you right click this and just say reset, it'll put it at 000111. It's just sort of an ethereal thing. It's not a physical thing in the world, so we don't really need to know about it. and I have this second script here. You can ignore that. But this first script here, the BRS UI Manager, we are going to be dealing with that. Now, we have one that we started because we were doing some other UI stuff, and I'm going to give you the updated version for this. And essentially, you're only going to need to know about two things. The inventory overlay, which we'll talk about that in a moment, and then the TPC here stands for third person character. So that's this guy here. Okay, so that's all it is for the BRS UI. It's just an empty game object, so you can right click and say create empty, and then call it BRS_UI. Make sure that it is at 000111, and then for the position rather, and for the scale. And then we're going to attach this script, and I'll show you that script in a little bit. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. Now, underneath of this is our canvas, and the canvas you will be familiar with from the first or second episode. We did the compass, so that will be here as well. I've just kind of disabled all this because we're not focused on that for this episode. And then once we open up this, you'll see I got a couple of things. I have a reference image. This is for me, this is the reference where I got a picture of Fortnite, so I can start to kind of lay out the physical elements of the UI on the screen. We got a lot more coming for that, so don't you worry. And this is where I got the approximate size and shape for all of these icons, and we'll talk about that too. All right, then we have this object called Viewing Inventory, and this is just an image. So under your canvas, if you right click and say UI and say image, you'll get this, and my settings for this are 000 with a center pivot, and then I have a width and height of 1920 by 1080. That's the size of my screen. And then there'll be this image called background. This is just, I clicked the circle to the next of it, and there's a bunch of stuff that comes with Unity. It's actually part of like the buttons and things for making UI. And I just chose background. It doesn't have to be anything really. If I show it to you here, you'll see that's all it is. Just kind of an overlay. And this is meant to simulate in Fortnite. In order to drag and drop these items around, we have to go into sort of a pause menu where our character stands still. The game continues, but only in that mode can we actually move these icons around. So this screen coming up is kind of a visual indicator that we're in that mode. Okay, so then down here, these two things we have, inventory, UI, and frame. So we're not going to talk about frame this time around, but for Fortnite and slot-based inventories, when you select an item, the selected item is the one that, you know, if you select slot number 3 here with this ice, say it's an ice weapon, well then we have to play an animation and all that kind of stuff happens, so that frame will move. So for right now, it's just going to stay static here. And we'll provide the image for this, but essentially it's an image, and then I moved it to a certain position, which we'll talk about that when we talk about the frame in another episode. Okay, so the inventory UI, this is the meat and potatoes here, okay? This is another image, so again, right-click, UI, image, okay, and it has a very specific size and location. So there is no actual image here. If you click on the source image and click this, I just went to the very top left and chose none. That just makes it kind of a clear container. We don't really care about what it looks like. But its position and width and height is very important. So we're going to set this to a bottom right pivot, okay, and then we're going to set it to -554 on the X, 60 on the Y, 540 for the width, and 80 for the height. And this is based upon when I had that reference image, this one here. I brought it up in Photoshop and did a bunch of crazy lines and figured out the approximate size and shape that we're going to put all these things in here. A little bit of happy math, rounded some corners, that kind of thing. But these are the numbers we came up with to make this UI fit in this area. And if you zoom in up at the top here, I don't know if you know this, when you're doing stuff with UI, this is very handy. At the top here, I can drag this and increase my scale. And now I have these little bars to here to slide in and actually view my UI stuff a lot closer. So at this -554, 60, 540, and 80, this fits this whole area exactly around these 6 items. And each of our 6 items are, I believe, 80 by 80, and then 90 by 90, or 82 by 82, but 90 by 90 when we make the larger ones. Okay, so inside of the inventory UI, we have a whole ton of images. I think there's 6 of these, and then these are actually images that we then turn into prefabs, so we'll talk about that in a second. But the first 6 are pretty easy. These are going to be our actual inventory slots. So we have slots 1 through 6, okay? You don't actually need these, but I created them in order to give us a visual representation of where they are and an opportunity to make sure that our math is correct and then we gave them a color. So when you right click on the inventory UI, you're going to say UI, another image, okay? And what I'm going to do is temporarily we're going to hide these guys. So there we go. So now we should see nothing, right? Well, when you first create this image, it's going to be something. So what I did here was I just changed the color to be red and made sure that it was semi-transparent so I could see through it. The reason behind that is that when I have these on top of here and you start to drag them around, I can actually see where the position is that it came from. And it helps me kind of line things up. So as you can see here, slot number 1 is at a position of negative 230x, 0, 0, with a width of 80 and 80, okay? Then slot 2 through 6 are going to be all the same kind of thing where it's an image. And for your purposes, you can turn this on or off, the image script itself. But I made it red in color and it's on 100 here. So about halfway on the transparency, just so you can see where it is. But I'm just going to run down the numbers for you really quickly. So slot number 1 is negative 230. Slot number 2 is negative 138. Slot number 3 is negative 46. And now they're opposites. So slot number 4 is 46. 5 is 138. And 6 is 230. Now, because these are on a horizontal row, you only need to affect the X position. You do not need to affect the Y or Z position. And by creating these as children of this object, this guy is already positioned properly in the world to fill this area. So the rest of these slots 2 through 6 are all going to be in the correct positions. Now you'll notice that they're 80 by 80 because this is the smaller size, and it's the 90, I think 92 by 92 is the larger size we'll talk about in a future episode when we do more with these items here. And that will actually fill in more of the space around this frame. Okay? So for now, let's take these guys and we're going to, again, hide their coloring. We don't need this. Let's scale back up because we know we're talking about this area. Now let's talk about our inventory tiles. So I'll bring these back on. So what these are is, these are objects that have multiple parts to them and they have a lot of images in them, and these are the items that will allow you to drag back and forth. And this is based upon another tutorial from another user, and I will be sure to link him in the description below. We're not affiliated in any way. He's just a fellow YouTuber who makes a bunch of really awesome content that I learned from him, so then I pass the knowledge on to you. I will definitely link him in the description. Check it out. That's how you actually do the dragging and dropping. So if you follow his tutorial with the pieces here that I'm going to show you how to build, you'll end up with exactly this. Okay? So I'd like to share my audience with him and vice versa. You know, if you guys need anything, this is where you go. Either if I don't know, I'm going to find you who does. Okay? So what we're going to create here are these prefabs. So I go into my content browser here. I'm going to look for my inventory folder, and I've got that somewhere down here. So assets, let's find it. Inventory. I don't actually see my inventory folder, so I'm not sure. This back and forth with all the folders and everything, I think it got a little messed up. So I'm going to have to find it. There it is. Okay. All right, we're cooking now. So under prefabs, you'll see that we have one prefab. It's called inventory tile, and it's made up of a couple things. So first up, what is an inventory tile? Well, it's just an image. So again, same thing we've been doing. Right click, UI, create an image. Okay. Call it inventory tile. Now you are going to have to create a new tag, and this tag is going to be called UI draggable. So the first 3 letters there are all capital, and the last bunch are lowercase. UI draggable. And that is a tag that you need to create in order to follow the other gentleman's tutorial. Okay. So if you don't know how to create a tag, all you do is select any item, and up here under tag, click, and if you don't see it here, you'll be able to click here and say add tag. And then you can click this little plus, add whatever tag you want, click save, and then reselect it, and now you'll be able to choose it from the drop-down list, okay? So the only thing you need to set as UI draggable is the actual inventory tile. Everything else is going to be a child of it, and it will move along with it, all right? Then underneath that, you have 2 other objects, and these objects can also be and should also be images. So right-click, image, and I'm going to call them selected and unselected. And the reason is, when our items are moving back and forth and they end up in a slot where the frame is around it, which means it is the selected slot, it's going to go back and forth between these 2 states. And basically we're just swapping out the image to make it a larger image, but you can also add some special razzle-dazzle to it, whatever you feel like. So each of these objects here, which are images, are exactly the same image script, but with one important difference. Well, 2 important differences. The tag, let's just make sure it's not UI draggable, so I set it to untagged. And this raycast target, uncheck that. You'll notice that for neither one of these, it's checked. So we need to uncheck that because otherwise we'll try and drag this instead of dragging its parent controller, which is very important. And then one final set of images underneath of these guys is the icon you want to appear. Now for each of these icons, you need to make sure that they are, again, untagged and that the raycast target is unchecked. That way we're not dragging this, we're actually dragging 2 layers deep its grandparent object actually at this point. So we drag the whole mess all together. So once you have this all set up like this with the children underneath, just minimize all of that, or collapse all that rather, and you click and drag down here into your prefabs folder and it will create this for you. And now you have a prefab, and you can bring this prefab into the scene just like that, and now I have an additional one. You see there, number 6. And he's got the old icons and everything. And those are some of the icons from the other gentleman's tutorial. What I did for you here was I created a series of icons here, and these are all loosely based on the idea of the 5 elements, or you know, earth, wind, water, that kind of thing. So I just made a couple of icons that were bold, and you can actually see what's going on. And I wanted to make sure that they were clear for you guys, so that you could actually use these in other projects if you need to, or in this project. So in order to set that up under your icons here, all you have to do is go into your inventory, and in the download link, you'll be able to download the textures, and here they all are. And for each texture, make sure it's set to a texture type of texture 2D and UI. And what I like to do is down here under the compression, I just set it to none. So whatever size it is, it'll try to display it as high quality as possible. And when you do that, you'll see that the background kind of disappears from it, and that means that now it knows that it's a sprite because they were designed with transparent backgrounds. Okay, so let's take a look at what we got so far. So if you've gone to the other gentleman's tutorial, followed his tutorial, you should now be able to click and drag these guys, and they'll bounce around just like this. There we go. And you can use the icons I provided you, or you can use his, whatever you feel like. I just made some that kind of all go together there. Now, one last thing we're going to do is a little bit of scripting, because in Fortnite, the mouse is usually captured, is what we call it, to where wherever I move the mouse cursor, I'm looking around and moving. So I can't do this at the same time that I'm running around the world. You know, I can't just go, oh, let me just change my weapons. Okay, now I'm running around again. So what we're going to do is this. If I hit the I key on my keyboard, you'll notice that I'm hitting the keys. I can't move around anymore. But my mouse still works to do this. All right? So now we have not yet locked this out so that you can't do this while you're doing that, because eventually we will replace the mouse controls with that. And you won't be able to, because you won't be able to actually get the mouse over here. But this gives you an opportunity to start down the path of breaking the gameplay here, where you notice the character is still idling animation. The game's still running. I'm just in this state where I'm inventory managing, saying, okay, I want a healing potion up first, and then, you know, my leaf power or whatever, and whatever this is, you know, just organizing that. And then I hit I, and I'm right back to the action. So now I'm doing things again. I can move again. I hit I again and say, okay, all right, we need to move some stuff around. Water power's up next. There you go. Just like that. Okay, so let's take a look at how we do that. So in the scripting, let's take a look at scripts. We have, this is the script that you create through the gentleman's tutorial, the UI element dragger, okay? So we have that there. Then we have inventory item. This is something I've been working on. We'll get to that later. Display, I need to go into the script is for, let me think for just a second. There we go. So we have script is for our UI is on the UI itself. UI manager script, okay? Here he is. So let's find that. So BRS UI. There he is. Okay, so let's open that guy up and we're going to take a look at him. And I'm going to show you what I did, what we've been working towards, and then I'll provide it for downloads. You don't have to worry about this. So let's minimize that as soon as it comes up. I will be switching to Visual Studio as well because of the new changes that are coming, so we need to roll with the times. Okay, so first of all, where does this script go once you download it? So once you download it, the script goes on your BRS UI object, just kind of right there, and you'll notice that it's looking for a couple things. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. So at the top here, a lot of this with the acceptable drop zone and this area that I've commented out for more about the can jump, this is stuff that we're working on. So you're getting a little bit of a look ahead for our plane part of the tutorial series where you can actually drop out of the plane. So we're working on that. There's still some other parts I want to finish before I kind of throw it at you and say, here you go. But for now, to make this part work, I wanted to show you this part because this is important. All right, so the top of our script, the really part that we're focusing on for this time is right here. So we have a private Boolean value of is viewing inventory, and that's true. So this means, is it possible to be viewing the inventory right now? Yes, that's true, okay? We have a public game object for the inventory overlay. That's that screen I talked about. A private animator for our third-person animator, because we need to get the animations for the character. And then a game object for our third-person controller. And now this part's a little bit confusing, but follow me here. We want the player control script, which is part of the player, third-person controller character thing you can drag into the world from Unity. But to get to it, here's how we get to it: is Unity standard assets, .characters, .third person user control. Lots of breath there. Okay, so this is what we're actually getting, is the actual script that controls the character to say whether or not you can run forward, whether or not you can jump, all that kind of stuff. So that's all you need to know for there. So in the start, we're just going to reach out and say, hey, let's go ahead and get the animator for my third-person controller. Get the animator for that. Oh, and while you're at it, also fill in our player control script here with that same thing, the Unity assets, characters, third-person user control. Get a handle to both the animations and the third-person character controller. Okay, so down here we're going to say if we press the I key for inventory, we're going to set our is viewing inventory, that true or false state, equal to the input for this function. So this function is called inventory screen viewing, and we're going to pass in this variable. So it's going to be true or false, right? Then down here, this is going to say, we're going to bring in our true-false state and say, if we're true, then we're going to do stuff. If we are going to show the inventory, what are we going to do? Well, we're actually going to reach into the third-person animator and say, turn off forward running and turn off turning. Set them both to 0. We won't be able to do either of those things. And then go into the control script and actually disable it. Set its enabled to false. So we've made the player stop moving, and then we've said now you can't move them at all. And then we're going to show our overlay. So that inventory overlay, that screen I talked about, we're going to say, go ahead and turn that on. Cool, okay. So then if you hit the I key again, and you come back through here, we're going to say, right here, we're going to say go into this and pass that key in. And I'm going to say here, else, if we're not able to do that, then let's do something else. So down here, we're going to say, hey, go ahead and enable the script, so make sure that the player can now run, okay? And then turn the screen off, that screen that we overlaid. And for either state, the true or the false, the last thing we do is we're going to flip-flop that value. So this little exclamation mark is the not the current view state. So if it's true, it's going to go to false. If it's false, it's going to go to true. Which means that every time you hit I, that's how we can flip-flop. Because otherwise we just go through once and you'd be stuck forever. We don't want to do that. So this is the script, and again, I'm going to leave this other stuff in here for you just so you can kind of get a little sneak peek ahead. But you can see some of the other things that we've been doing, and maybe some of you who are real, engineers out there, you just sort of pick it apart and see what you can do with it. I'll leave you a little bit of extra there. But we are working towards that, and this is going to be a part of it because this is managing most of the UI of the whole game. But in here, we just wanted to inject the stuff that is important for our inventory today. Okay, so all you have to do is download that script and then attach it to the UI here. And you do that just by dragging and dropping, just like that. You'll get this little icon there with a little saying, yep, you can go ahead and throw that on there. And then we have to hook these things up. So you can ignore the first two. This inventory overlay, that's going to be the screen. That's going to be this thing that we made. All right, so all you have to do is drag that right there to connect it up. And then the third-person controller is this whole thing. This guy right here, you just drag him over. And then hit play. And now we can run around our world, find some items, and this won't do anything except cosmetic right now, but there we go, the item came into us. And I can hit I, and I can't move, but I can deal with this kind of stuff. And I can hit I again, and now I can move again. So there you go. So again, I apologize, it was a lot of talking, but I wanted to give you guys a good resource that I found was this gentleman's tutorial, which again will be linked in the description. And we're going to do the drag and drop here to get these things to snap together. We're going to work on when we go into I, if we drag off of a certain area, that it will actually call to drop the item. And I wanted to give you the general idea of all the different systems that we're going to have involved. And if I remember here, I'll put up on the screen, the overall plan here. So what we're doing here is we're trying to generate some systems that will all talk to each other in the proper way. Now, a bit of a disclaimer here. I did a bunch of research into inventory systems, but I'm not following any of them. I just got out some scrap paper after I kind of had the idea and started to just sketch out the idea for myself. Part of this whole series is that I'm learning and growing just like you guys are. So I wanted to build it my way, which may not be the best way. I'm okay with that. If you have better ways, politely, let me know, and let's work together to make a really good, cool system for everybody to use. And maybe I'll show you something you never thought of, and maybe you'll show me something I never thought of. That's great. That's what I want. I want us all to grow together. So thank you so much, guys, for all of you who've been sticking with me. We just reached over 3,000 subscribers. That is just amazing. Let's keep going. Let's just get everybody involved and making cool games together, okay? And that's what I want to do for you guys. So please keep sending in your suggestions. I apologize. The list is very long because you guys are awesome and have all kinds of cool ideas, and I'm just trying to get to them as quickly as I can. But we are working hard, so bear with me, and we're going to keep going. And once again, guys, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, keep practicing, get better, and I'll see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.